Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar this morning, and thank you all for joining me. My name is Harish Subramanian. I'm a director here at Great Learning and the program director for the full stack development, the Career Accelerator program in full stack development. And just a couple of brief points about me. I had varying experiences, wide array of experiences professionally. Got my MBA from Kellogg School of Management in Chicago. My master's is in computer science from the University of Texas at Austin. I've worked in financial software, building algorithms for hedge funds, asset managers, trading floors, and so on. I've also worked in management consulting, consulting for some of the biggest technology companies and media companies in the US, in Canada, and in Africa. And what we are going to talk about, and the reason I'm introducing all of that is because I'm bringing all of those experiences and talking to you not just about full stack development from a technical perspective, but also about its relevance to you and its relevance more broadly, to the industry at large. Right. So what are we going to talk about this morning? We're going to talk about, the IT and the IT services sector and the landscape as a whole, right? What's going on? What are the big seismic shifts? What are the big transformative things that are going on that are relevant to you? We're going to talk about who a full stack developer is. I think the phrase full stack developer is thrown around quite widely and quite loosely. So let's define what we mean when we talk about a full stack developer. And I'm fairly confident this applies to a lot of you, and this is of great interest to a lot of you. We're going to talk about the jobs and the salary landscape. Right. So what kind of jobs are available for full stack developers? What kind of salaries do people make? What is going to be expected of you as a full stack developer from the industry? And finally, we'll spend a few minutes talking about our Career Accelerator program in full stack development. At the end of all of this, if you have certain questions, I'm happy to take them. We'll spend a few minutes answering some of your questions, and for whatever reason, if I can't get your questions answered today, please reach out. Please still send them in, either through the chat window here, or I'll give you the contact information at the end of this this seminar, and you can send your questions in. We'll do our best to answer them. And it doesn't matter if your questions happen to be about the program or about the industry as more broadly. Please send them in. Right? What we are hoping to do is help you succeed in your careers. So if that means give you free advice about what you should be learning and what you should be doing to advance your careers, we're more than happy to do that. Yeah. All right. So let's take a look at this whole technology landscape. Right? We're talking about really massive numbers up there, right? We're talking about an astronomical growth in the size of technology products, right? With increased digital adoption. It used to be that all of the technology industry was technology products and a few really big enterprise companies. But now I would argue that there are no such thing as technology companies, right? Because nearly every company is becoming a technology company. And all of the industry is becoming technology enabled. So let's start to focus more broadly and start to think about what it means to be a part of this technology landscape, right? In a recent report that came out from the World Economic Forum, in fact I think it just came out in the last few weeks, right? It listed the top 10 emerging jobs. Now, this was put in the context of the kinds of jobs that are rising and the kinds of jobs that are going to decline in the future as a result of automation, as a result of AI, as a result of a lot of these big transformative changes in the industry. The one thing that remains are these software and application developers and analysts, right? It's always one of the hottest jobs. It's always one of the emerging jobs. And like I told you, if you take a step back from all of this jobs talk, and if you just think about what is the big industry trend that we're looking at. I just told you a moment ago, there are no technology companies anymore. all companies have become technology companies. And if you take that as the premise, then every company needs application developers. Every company needs people to build technology tools, right? If you think about the mid 90s, people used to list proficiency in computers as a skill on their CV or on their resume, right? Saying, hey, I know how to use a computer. I know how to type on a computer. I know how to do file management. I know how to use basic tools on a computer. Chances are you're not doing that today. I would be really surprised if you're still doing that. Why? Because it's become pervasive. Everybody uses a computer. Whether or not you are computer literate is almost not even a question. If you're a professional, you're computer literate, and therefore nobody ever lists that. So similarly, it used to be that certain companies build technology products for everybody, but with the industry, getting to a stage where everybody's building technology products, it's no longer a niche area. We're talking about wide applicability for technology professionals, especially people who can build applications. Let's talk about another very interesting phrase I used. Right? I said people who can build technology applications. I'm not talking about people who can code in Java specifically. I'm not talking about people who can, do C# coding specifically. I'm talking about people who can build applications end to end. Think about the whole thing, right? How do I show it to people? Once I show an application to people, how do I then connect that to a backend technology? Where does the information get stored? Think about the whole thing. If you are a technology product builder, you're thinking about the whole thing. That is the context you should be thinking about. Right? For you to be a good full stack developer, you need to be, and I've used the phrase jack of all trades, but I would actually say you need to be a master of all trades. Right? And it's becoming increasingly easier to do that. It used to be that you could spend years and years and years learning just one of these things. Right? You could become a super specialized database person. Why? Because 15, 20 years ago, databases were only stored within really, really large, expensive $1 million machines that were stored within cool rooms in multi-million-dollar companies. Right? Now, a database is freely available to anybody at any time using any service, including the cloud. Similarly, the logic layer used to be an entire 100-person team. Right, the front end layer or the presentation layer used to be a large team of people that involved in integrating UI people, user experience people, people who understood fonts and creative dynamics, people who understood the ability to render information. So there were, we were talking about large teams with very, very super specialized skills. But what's happened? What's happened is that a lot of these tools have started to become a little easier to use. Right, frameworks have come up that have started to productize a lot of things that used to be custom built. Right, so earlier, you had to write lots of code for everything, for every function. Right, but now you have frameworks, you have packages, you have pre-packaged blocks of code that you can integrate into your larger application. What that's meant is that the need for super specialization has decreased somewhat, and conversely, the need for you to understand how these pieces fit together has increased. And hence, the full stack developer has started to become a lot more important. And incidentally, it is one of the fastest paths towards becoming a technology leader or an architect. Why? Because as an architect, as a solutions architect, or as a technology architect, or as a technology leader, your role is to be able to decipher the implications of everything fitting together. Right, so you can't say I'm a database person, you can't say I'm a backend Java person, I'm a front end person, and I don't understand the rest of it, and therefore I need to consult with somebody else to make that decision. As a senior architect, as a technology leader, it is your responsibility to make that decision. It's to understand how everything fits together, what tools I should be using, what tech stack my company uses, and so on. So how do you get there? You get there by getting yourself comfortable with years and years of experience building things yourself. So if you, at some point in your future, assuming you are early in your career, at some point, 5-10 years down the road, you want to become an architect, a full stack developer is the best way to go. That's how you get to really, really important, significant leadership roles, technology leadership roles at the quickest possible, in the quickest possible time. The obvious question that comes up if you talk about the fact that, hey, this whole landscape is trending towards full stack development, integrative development, and all of that. You need some proof, right? You need proof that there are jobs here. You need proof that these jobs pay well, and you need proof that these jobs are on the upward trajectory. All of which is very, very easy to get, and you don't have to trust us. If you don't trust the full stack development stats that we've put up here from a career or jobs and salary perspective, I'd urge you to go and do this search yourself. Right, go look at full stack engineer, full stack developer roles in Naukri, on LinkedIn, or IIM Jobs, or any of these platforms that you're looking at. Look at the salary range that they list. Look at that on Glassdoor. Look at that on other salary platforms that you can think of, and keep track of it and look at the upward trajectory. Right, every one of these stats that we've talked about, it is by far the number one trending job. Why? Because, as I said, we're not talking about a fad, we're not talking about a tool, we're not talking about a specific skill. We're talking about the fact that the entire industry has started to move towards integrative development, integrative product development, which means that full stack developers have become the most indispensable part of the industry. So it is by far the number one trending job. It has by far the most number of job postings, and the kinds of astronomical salaries that you see, it's mind-boggling, right? So you're talking about people who are starting their careers at 9 lakhs, just and the difference between this and somebody who either starts as a very specialized coder at a really large tech company, we're talking about 2-3 times as much. Right, if your Cognizance and TCSs and all of these guys are paying for an entry level fresher or a professional, you're paying 3 lakhs, chances are here you're getting 5, 6, 7, 8 lakhs, right? And we're talking about massive increases for somebody who understands this integrative development process, who understands how to build things end to end as a full stack developer. And this trend is only increasing. This is not a trend of the past, right? We're seeing these kinds of job growths. We're seeing the number and the salaries and the importance of these jobs only increasing day on day. And guess what? All of these, and as much as full stack development is talked about as this cool thing that folks at really cool startups and things like that do, let me give you an insider tip. These jobs are much more prevalent at really large multinational companies, and they are hiring hundreds, if not thousands, of people for full stack development, whereas a startup might hire 2, 3, 4, 10 people. Right. So really, if you're looking at some of the hottest jobs, and if you're looking at doing this reliably, if you're trying to increase your chances of getting a full stack development job, chances are, you should be looking at the really large IT companies, the MNCs, and distinguishing yourself and differentiating yourself from the average fresher who's coming in and getting trained on one particular tool or one particular specific skill. What's more, if you're looking, of course, everything I said applies equally to the entire world and more pertinent to us, most major cities in India. But the one thing that you will start to notice here is that, almost uniformly, the salary trend is higher in Bangalore as a city, not just higher pay, but also more jobs. If you go and again do that same Naukri or LinkedIn search and then try to filter by location, you're going to find that Bangalore has by far the most number of jobs in this space. It has the most variety of companies hiring in this space, and has among the highest pay scales. And these pay scales sustain themselves through the life of not just early career, but mid career and more advanced stages as well. And the gap just widens and widens and widens. Okay. I hope You've seen the light in terms of the career opportunity, in terms of the jobs, in terms of the salaries. So the next obvious question is, okay, you've convinced me about the big opportunity, but now you need to tell me more. Right now, you need to tell me the role of a full stack developer. What do you mean when you say full stack developer? All the integrative stuff you said makes sense, but what do you mean? Right? If you think about, you know, put yourself in the shoes of, let's say you're starting a company or you're joining a company, right? And you have to do everything. You are building the technology product. Whether you're building an e-commerce application, you could be building an educational application, you could be building, a delivery application. It doesn't matter, right? You are going to have to build a really slick interface, right? But I don't just mean slick in the sense that it looks pretty and uses a lot of white space. I think a lot of people mistake form for function and start to think that, hey, if this thing looks like the Apple website, I've done my job. No, when I say slick, I mean functionality is slick. Everything works, everything is in a place that it needs to be, right? And there are tools for this, right? So not just basic HTML, which is what most front-end developers had to work with 5-10 years ago, or I'd say 15 years ago. But you have style sheets with CSS, you have JavaScript that adds functionality, you have frameworks like Angular and React that productize and pre-package a lot of these functionality, that make things more integrative, that maintains the data integrity and the relational integrity of all of these features, right? But that all of that means that you now have a well functioning front end that interfaces with your customer or your user, right? But behind that, you need a whole bunch of other functionality, right? When I press a button, what happens? um, how do I pull information? How do I store information? How do I get how do I make calculations? How does a lot of this stuff happen, right? When I say shop, what happens, right? How does it open a new screen? How does it pull up the relevant material? How does it display it in a certain format that's personalized to me? A lot of the logic, right? A lot of the functionality is the backend, and that's something you need to learn just as well, if not more, right? Because the front end is how you show it to the user. As far as they're concerned, that is the world they interact with, but behind the scenes there's a whole bunch of stuff happening. That's the backend, and then that backend talks to the database, right? And you're probably going to use SQL statements using MySQL or PLSQL, or if you're using what is called unstructured data, things like MongoDB or CouchDB, to reach out to databases to extract information. Now, this information can be customer information, it can be old receipts, it can be your order history, it can be all of this stuff, right? It all gets stored in a database. So if you start thinking about how all these three things fit in together, you come in and a user uses the front end, they go to a particular screen, they try to perform an action. All of the logic for that action is taken care of by the backend code, and that backend code then draws on information that's stored in the database. And you remember, I said you are the sole developer, you're the founder, you are the CTO, you are everything, you're the person who's thinking about this end to end, have to be familiar with all three of these. Now, in larger companies, you might not be the only person doing all of this, but regardless of whether you're focusing on the front end, or regardless of whether your project is right now focusing on building a back end, you need to understand how all of this works, because paradigms like DevOps coming, structure that used to exist, of planning and then writing code and testing it and all of that being done by different people, that world is gone. That world has been replaced by everything being done by one person or a small group of people, each of whom understands all the moving parts. And that's why it's important as a full stack developer, regardless of what your super specialty is, or regardless of what your superpower is, whether it's front end, database, or back end, for you to understand all of these pieces. And all of this doesn't work in a vacuum, right? One thing I'll add here is it's also important, equally important, to understand things like APIs, right? How do you reach out to APIs? What are APIs? APIs are kind of like these. It's like you can think about it this way, right? If I want electricity, I can actually go and try to generate electricity. I can build a wind turbine, I can build a hydropower plant and try to draw that energy through copper wires into my house and try to light a light bulb. But I'm not going to do that because somebody's already done most of that work for me, right? The electric company, the utility company has done 99% of the work, and they've brought it to a point where there is a socket on the wall, there's a plug point, and I just have to plug in and I get my electricity. That is exactly what an API does, right? The API has given you that plug point, and all you need to do is plug in. What I need to do as the developer is to understand what shape of plug fits into it, what voltage output it's going to give me, and therefore adjust my needs appropriately. That's the only last mile adjustment that I need to do, right? So understanding APIs, understanding version control, right? Because I'm going to develop lots and lots and lots of code, deploy, check in, do all of that stuff. What are the right tools, right? I'm going to use Git, I'm going to use GitHub. I need to understand the version control environment. I need to understand, and guess what, nearly every single company and nearly every single company's technical environment is now on the cloud, and nearly every major company uses DevOps as their software development process. So you do need to understand how and where your code is finally going to be used and where is it going to reside. Because the old world of going and buying a box from Dell for $200,000 and putting it in a server room and cooling it using a fan and having another database installed in it, chances are you're not going to live and work in that world. Chances are you're going to use AWS, you're going to use Azure, you're going to use one of the cloud environments. You're going to deploy things continuously using these principles called continuous integration and continuous deployment with DevOps. You're going to use a whole variety of tools that are continuously monitoring for when things break, about whether your code is working well and playing well with existing code and so on, right? So that plumbing or that infrastructure of cloud, storage, service, compute, network, DevOps principles, DevOps tools, connecting to other APIs and services, that's as much a part of your job as the stuff on the top with front end, back end, and database. Because the front end, back end, and database code that you write is going to be maybe one file, right? Is maybe going to be one, I don't know, a few kilobytes or a few megabytes, right? But that then has to play with all the other things that hundreds of companies around the world have built. They need to plug into other services. They need to pull information from a variety of different services. They need to be stored on the cloud. They need to continuously be monitored and fixed when things break. So you as a full stack developer need to understand all of this. And that's not a mean feat, which is why we spend so much time trying to do it when we try to impart these skills to you. All right, so that's the world. I hope I did a thorough job of explaining that to you. Right now, a lot of buzzwords get thrown around when we talk about front end, back end, database. I just told you about 15 different tools in that previous slide. And I'm sure a number of you are asking the question, so what should I learn? There are literally 1,000 different languages and tools and packages and frameworks. How do I choose? Look, the short answer is you pick the ones that are most widely used, among the most widely used, right? But you also pick up the ability to adapt to new tools. Because guess what? You're not going to be able to choose whether you use Angular or React in your next implementation. Chances are that decision has been made by your CTO or the head of technology or your architect or your boss. So you may not even have the choice. But you can't say, therefore, I will not learn it at all. You do have to learn it. You do have to learn it very well. You have to make a choice, pick one of the most popular ones, go with it, but be adaptable and be able to pick up something else. Similarly, most big companies use Java as their primary backend implementation framework or language. But there are equally smaller companies that use Python. There are companies that are very have long-standing contracts with Microsoft that use .NET. Right, so you may not have the choice. Now, I'd suggest you learn Java to start with, because chances are most companies are going to use that. And so if I just had to play the odds and think just what is the likelihood that I need to, that one language will serve me well? It's probably going to be Java, because over 2/3 of the companies use Java. But at the same time, if you happen to go to the other 1/3 of the companies that happens to use .NET or Python, you can't say, hey, you know what, I'm lost. So think about the fact that you need to become proficient as a programmer. You need to become proficient as a developer who understands how to develop good, strong, functional, maintainable, scalable code, um, regardless of which platform, which front end tool, which back end tool, which database you're using. But as part of your learning journey, obviously pick the one that is most widely used, and that's been our principle, right? You see the the graph of the most popular technologies according to Stack Overflow's developer survey just last year, right? We cover the top 5, in fact 6, because you're going to have to use the shell as well, right? We don't teach you programming in C++, we don't teach you programming in C# in Python, because guess what, ultimately you're going to build this backend in either Java or in C# or in C++ or in Python, and that choice is not up to you. So let's go with what is used most widely by companies, and that's Java, right? Similarly, JavaScript is by far overwhelmingly the most dominant front end language you're going to have to know. HTML and CSS everybody needs to know. So these are quite obvious, right? So the choice of what tech stack you need to learn is starting to emerge as a fairly obvious thing, and that's what we go with. So what does the industry expect from you as a full stack professional? Right? They expect that you have spent a ton of time actually writing code. Now, I don't know how many of you went through 4-year degrees in engineering colleges and things like that, but I can tell you, not just from my personal experience, but from experience that I've seen, that I have had at other institutions recently, a lot of places make you learn code by writing code on paper. That is baffling, right? That is not how code gets written. That's not how code gets tested. And we all know that's not how you're going to write code in practice, right? You're not going to memorize a piece of error-free code and then start to write the code. You're going to learn to code by doing, by making small errors, by finding out where the error is, understanding how one thing interacts with another, and doing that over and over and over and over again. That's what they call deliberate practice, and that's how you get good at playing the guitar. That's how you get good at playing football or cricket. That's how you build muscle memory when you're doing pretty much any skill, and coding is no different. So that's the expectation, right? The second expectation is that you get proficient in building quality code, because guess what? You can understand the principles of everything, and you can tell me the most advanced concept about the memory allocation and the memory usage of, or the computational efficiency of a particular program. But if your code is filled with errors, and if it's got a whole lot of bugs, and chances are I can't rely on you to write good code, I can't hire you. And how do you get that proficiency in building quality code? It's by building a lot of poor quality code and learning from that process. And if you're going to spend all the first 6 months of your professional life learning from poor quality code at your job, you're starting off on the bad, on the wrong note. You need to be doing that in programs. You need to be doing that in our program. You need to be doing that in the classroom. The cost of failure in the classroom is low, right? Whether it's, for those of you who are final year students at colleges and things like that, do that now, right? Yes, you may not impress your professor or the person sitting next to you, but that's the whole point of learning how to do this well, right? Screwing up and failing now is actually the way you get better by the time you get that job. The industry expects prior experience in building end-to-end applications, right? It's very rare that you can just show up at a company, and I think that world is gone, right? Where you can just show up and say, hey, I know how to do this because I've spent 4 years learning the principles of Java, and by the way, I've read this book, by the people who basically invented all of this, and therefore, trust me, you need to hire me. That world doesn't exist anymore. People now expect that you have a set of working tools, that you have a set of projects, that you have proof that you can code well. And how do you get that proof? By building it, by building small applications first, and then building more complicated applications, and building even more complicated applications. What does the industry expect? They expect that you understand how to work in teams effectively, right? You're not again, this mythical image of a single coder sitting in a dark room and sipping coffee in the middle of the night and just writing code. That's not how most of the world works, right? And definitely not in large companies. You have to work well in teams. You have to convince your job is as much convincing other people of the value of your work, the understanding the trade-offs between time and efficiency and quality code and all of these other things. And how do you develop those skills? You develop those skills by doing it over and over again, by working in teams through your learning journey, by participating in hackathons, by building your skills, actually getting your hands dirty. That's how you build those skills. And finally, your code doesn't stand in a void. It's not in a vacuum, right? You have to understand where it gets deployed. It gets deployed on the cloud. It gets deployed using DevOps tools. As I just mentioned a few minutes ago, you as a full stack developer or as a software professional need to understand all of these implications as well. A lot is expected of you, right? So let's put it that way. A lot is expected of you, but the good news is that this is a known fact, right? It's harder when you don't know what people expect of you, right? It's okay to have a challenging role. That's why you get paid boatload of money, and that's why you get paid so much more than the average person if you're a good full stack developer. And it's a challenging role, but the good news is we know the secret. We have the key to unlocking that door, right? We now understand what is it that is expected of us. So that's easy. Right. All right. So we've talked about the opportunity. We've talked about why that's important. We've talked about what you need to know as a full stack developer. Let's spend just a few minutes understanding how we can help you get there. Right. So our entire Career Accelerator program in full stack development can be encapsulated in 3 words, which is learn, code, and build. You're going to learn how to write good quality code. You're going to do that by writing code over and over and over again, and you're actually going to build real tools. Now, like I said, this program is not just built in this vacuum, right? The traditional college way of doing things has always been, oh, let's look at the curriculum and let's look at the best textbooks in the world that everybody uses, the canonical textbooks, and let's go through, by teaching you 16 hours of a particular concept on inheritance. That's not how the world works. So we said, okay, so what is it that is going to get you a job as a full stack developer? We went and talked to folks at Flipkart, at Payback, at Zensar, at Cognizant, at Tech Mahindra, at all of the biggest companies, whether it's product, whether it's service, whether it's financial services, IT consulting, e-commerce, and said, what is it that will convince you to hire somebody as a full stack developer or as a front end or a back end developer with a full stack focus? And we work backwards from that requirement. And all the people you see up on the screen have been integral to us designing this curriculum. Right? And that's how we arrive at a curriculum. And our program structure, as I said, and you'll notice this diagram or this image, this graphic looks very similar to this, because what we've worked on as far as our curriculum is concerned is working backwards from what the industry expectations are. The industry expects that you spend a whole lot of time writing code hands-on. We've built hands-on experiential learning as one of the most important facets of your learning experience. The industry expects that you understand working in teams. We've built pair programming and team programming and collaboration and in your labs and assignments, right? So if you look at this, we've built everything ground up, structurally built to fulfill every one of those objectives that we just mentioned as far as industry expectations are concerned. So you're going to build. It's all about hands-on experiential learning, right? You're going to gain a lot of expertise by practicing what you learn. You're going to have expert code reviews. You're going to have some of the best people in the industry reviewing your code and giving you feedback the way your manager would. But without the cost of potentially getting fired, without the cost of potentially getting a bad assessment or an appraisal. You are going to get the opportunity to try things, to experience things, to get real live feedback from people who, at the cutting edge of the industry, without the cost of failure at an actual company. That is about as close to a fantastic experience as you can get, right? You're going to build a capstone project. This is going to be your own real world application, right? And it's not about saying I'm going to learn a semester full of concepts and then I have a week to build a project. No, you're going to start building this capstone project from day one, and for weeks and weeks and weeks, as you learn newer concepts, you're going to integrate that into your capstone project, right? So it's like, think about it this way, right? I can give you a you want to build a house, a simple house, a one room house, right? Using wood and rope and concrete and a bunch of other things that you have available to you. I can either spend 6 months in a classroom teaching you how to build a house, you take copious notes, and then you go build that house. Or every day, I'm going to teach you one aspect of building a house. I'm going to tell you how to tie the ropes together. I'm going to tell you how the beams fit well together. I'm going to tell you how the foundations work. And then that very day, you go for the second half of that day or for most of that day and actually go do what I just told you. Which do you think will yield a much more effective learning experience? I can guarantee it will be the second, right? It is going to be the integration of learning and doing. That's the same experience we're going to bring to your capstone project or any project for that matter. You're going to learn how to do things by doing it over and over again. And every day that you learn a skill, you're going to use it right there and then. So you build that muscle memory. Like I said, you're going to learn how to do this in teams. You're going to have pair programming labs. You're going to have round robin programming. You're going to have all of these collaborative learning experiences where you're learning as much from your peers, as your friends, your classmates, as you are from the person standing in front of you. And you're going to learn how to do all of this on the cloud. Right? As I said, nearly 100% of all companies today are building things on the cloud. They're using the cloud. Some of the biggest companies you can think of, Facebook, Netflix, Amazon, Flipkart, Google, everything is on the cloud. So it makes no sense for us to not give you a taste of actually building, deploying, checking in your code, doing peer reviews, doing expert code reviews on the cloud, and doing your projects using the DevOps principles that you're going to be using with your manager at work. Right? You're going to do all of that. That's how you're going to learn how to do this. Again, it's not something that I can teach you in the classroom and then 6 months later you go and build. This is about doing. Right? As you can see, this doesn't come easy. Right? One of the reasons this is a career accelerator program, this is an intensive program, this is a boot camp that we bring you together, put you in a room, get cracking in a very, very intensive way, is because that's how you would do it at work. That's how you would learn at work. If you think about any job, right, especially a demanding job where you've learned a lot, it's got, everybody will tell you they've done it because it's been an intensive experience, it's been a hands-on experience, and it's been an immersive experience where they do it all day, every day. Right? This is not trivial. This is not a tool. This is not something really, really small. This is comprehensive. This is concrete, and this is going to transform your life. So I think it's worth the investment that you get immersive for just a couple of months. And at the end of it, you're on a completely different trajectory. The return on that time investment is huge. It's going to be really, really massive. So all of this informs our curriculum, right? So we obviously are going to, our curriculum is built in the same structure that I mentioned earlier. So you're going to learn a lot about front end and web development and things like that upfront. Why? Because you start to build the front end. You start to build the interface to the user, to the customer. That's the first step, right? The quicker you can get started on that, the quicker it is to then build all of the other areas behind it, right? Then once you've learned how to do these in a very fundamental way using JavaScript and HTML and CSS and all of that, then you learn how to use a framework like React. because guess what? That framework has done a lot of the job for you. Right? So how do these frameworks come about? Let's take a look at that. Right? Let's think about that. A lot of these frameworks come about because about 10 years ago, people tried to build all of these front end environments using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and they realized that they kept doing a certain set of things over and over again. They said, I don't want to have to keep writing the same code over and over again. So let me modularize it. Let me build tools so that I can come back and not have to repeat it over and over again. They shared it with other teams. They then shared it with other companies. That's how these frameworks get built. So what does React do? It largely does a lot of the work that somebody or you yourself might be able to do using the other tools, except it has simplified it for you. It has made it more efficient for you to use it. And therefore, you can focus more of your energy on actually building things that add value to your team, to your company, rather than reinventing the wheel. Once you've started to build this, you now can dive into the back end, right? I told you the computation layer, the framework that you start to use, the lattice structure that starts to give some substance, start to return information, starts to give meaning to the front end that you just built. And finally, you will spend a fair chunk of time understanding how the deployment works, how databases work, the final data layer of where your database is residing, how to get information, and so on. Right? And while this has all been laid out as a sequential structure, expect that these things are interspersed. Right? You're not always going to have to wait till the very end to learn that little bit about a database. Why? Because you're going to have to plug in and get information from day one. You're not going to wait till the very end to understand how Java works. Why? Because you're going to have to use some of this even when you're building your front end. Right? So it's going to be an integrative learning experience, and that's why I can't tell you, what, you learn topic X and you learn topic Y next week and you learn topic Z the week after, and guess what? Sequentially you build it. Right? These things, depend on each other. Right? Going back to the house analogy, I can't teach you how to build a wall if you don't have a floor. Right? What I can do is teach you how to build a wall after I have built the floor, so that you just learn that one aspect, but you still have to understand how that relates to whether the floor is made of stone or sand, whether the floor is slanted or straight, right? That's how you learn. You learn incrementally. You learn in context. You learn by doing real things. Now, all of this is in service, obviously, of you guys getting fantastic jobs, of you guys getting those 9 lakh jobs, of you guys getting, great salary hikes, fantastic career transitions. And we have track record of this, right? We have a platform called GL Accelerate, which is comprehensive, where we have recruitment drives, we have curated jobs, we have career mentorship, we have workshops. And all of this has already yielded results. Right? We've had thousands and thousands of successful learners. Most of them have had great career transitions. And the one thing I'll pause at, this 66% career transitions is not for young professionals such as yourself. That's across all of our students. For young professionals such as yourself, that number is nearly 100%. But obviously it's going to be for, when you take people with 15, 20, 25 years of experience, some of them don't want career transitions, or some of them don't get easy career transitions because your expectations are different. So, and that number includes all of the experienced people as well. Right? And across all of these demographics, we're talking about people getting significant salary hikes. Right? Let me give just anecdotal examples. Right, we're talking about just over the last couple of weeks, we've seen people from from some of our programs get 2.5 times what they used to get earlier. Right, people who quit their jobs, done 4-5 month programs, just like you guys are, and they've completely changed the trajectory. And let's say even if you make 50% more than you were making before, that compounds, right? In 5 years from now, that could mean the difference between a 35 lakh job and a 15 lakh job. Because guess what? Your starting point, and every year you're talking about increments on top of your starting point, and so on and so forth, right? So you have to think about how this leap, this getting to this different trajectory, takes you on a completely different path. Now, proof of these credentials, proof that we're doing something right, proof that our learning model works is in the companies that are alumni working. Right? If you look at this, our alumni work at some of the most exciting companies in the world, and chances are pretty much every major company in the world has an alum from our programs. So clearly, we're doing something right, and clearly you are going to have great company when you reach out as a great learning alum to other people at some of these companies. Chances are they're going to open that email that you sent. Chances are they're going to take that LinkedIn request that you sent, because you guys have that common affiliation. That's where alumni networks matter. The power of our alumni networks is in the fact that if you want a job at Standard Chartered, you've seen a really cool full stack developer job at Standard Chartered, you are going to reach out to that person who works there and say, hey, I have also taken a course from Great Learning just like you have, and I'm a full stack developer. Here's my e-portfolio. Here are the things that I have done as part of this course. I'm really interested in learning a little bit more about how to become a full stack developer at Standard Chartered. Can you help me? I can almost certainly guarantee that that person is going to respond because of that shared affiliation, because of that affinity, and you are going to open that door. That's how you use an alumni network, especially as a young professional. So, what does it take? All it takes is for you to have a real desire to become a full stack developer, right? I think that we have a fairly rigorous process, but the one thing I can tell you is that what separates a successful applicant into our program from somebody who's not as successful is the desire, is is a mindset, and is the willingness to make that investment in themselves. Any kind of programming or software background, and you don't have to be a developer as such. You could be in testing, you could be in deployment, you could be in maintenance, you could be in support, you could be a fresher who's looking at how does all this apply to you. Reach out and ask us. If you're in doubt and you think this may or may not be right for you, reach out. Right, like I said at the very beginning, we are here to help you advance in your careers, and if this program is not the reason you're reaching out, but you just want general advice, you want to understand how to advance in your career, we're here for you. So reach out anyway. If you have more questions, and I just said reach out like 5 different times. So how do you reach out to us, right? So write an email to us at fullstack@greatlearning.in, call us, go check out the program at greatlearning.in/fullstack, and we'll do our best to help you. Right? Like I said, this is a fantastic and exciting opportunity. We really think that this is the right time for you to invest in yourself to make the most of this opportunity. We are here to support your learning journey and to help you succeed professionally. So to the extent that we can help you, we are more than happy to do so. So please give us a call or send us an email, and let's get started on this. I'm open for questions now. I can spend the next few minutes answering questions, but for those of you who don't have questions or have to leave right now, thank you for joining me this morning. I wish you the very best in your learning journey and in your professional career, and happy learning to everybody. All right, so we're going to wrap up now. And like I said, thank you for joining us. If you guys have questions or think of questions, and it's not something that you can articulate right now, take your time, think about it, send it to us later. There's no rush. But in the meantime, you know, please reach out. And for those of you who are interested in understanding a little bit more about the content and understanding the architecture of a full stack web application, we do have another webinar coming up very soon, from our director of technology, who used to be an architect at Flipkart and is an IIT Bombay computer science graduate himself. So please sign in, please sign up for that webinar, and to learn a little bit more about how a full stack web application gets architected, gets designed. And yeah, and if you have any other questions, reach out to us. Thank you all.